Please welcome Darren Mowry, Country Manager at Amazon Web Services, Nordics.
Good morning, everyone. I've got to tell you, we have a track record for whoever has attended our summits in the past for bringing out the absolute best weather in Stockholm. So we've decided we're going to hold a summit every single day of the year here in the Nordics to try to make sure we maximize the sunlight. So again, good morning, and thank you so much for agreeing to spend an entire day with us. My name is Darren Mowry, and as you heard, I have had the incredible opportunity of leading the Nordics and living here in Sweden for over 3 years. We have a really special day in store, and while I would probably say that for almost all of our summits, this one is uniquely special, and I wanted to take a few minutes as we kick off to give you an idea of what makes today special and how also you can take advantage of the special things we have prepared for you. First and foremost, what I think is most special of the day are the people that are sitting to your right and your left, behind and in front of you, and yourself. And as I've said in the past, one of the most powerful opportunities that we want to provide by holding this summit is giving you an opportunity to connect with each other. What may be interesting to you is that 30% of the people in the room today are actually using AWS for a number of mission-critical workloads. There's incredible learnings and experience from that, and I would encourage you to find those people in the room and learn from the experiences that they've had. Another 40% of you in the room are just beginning your cloud journey. So you're just beginning to ask some of those questions of what could a cloud platform provide me? Will that help me move faster? Can that help me reduce costs? Can that help me think about experimentation in entirely new ways? And again, we think some of the best resources at this event today are you yourself. And so please take advantage of that resource. Secondly, we actually, as many of you may know who have come and joined us in the past, believe that the best way to help you understand AWS and what's possible is for you to meet customers and organizations who are already leveraging AWS. So we have 33 customers of all different shapes and sizes and industries participating in our event today. In fact, as you attend the tracks and the sessions later, you're going to see an important trend, and that is AWS will be sharing content, but even more importantly, customers of ours will be sharing specific insights, not only from a business value, but also from a technical perspective. We've also added something specific this year that I'd encourage you to take advantage of, and that is our Powered by AWS booth. Many of you may have seen it right outside in the expo area, and that booth, as you probably saw, is not manned with AWS people. It's manned by representatives from a whole collection of customers that have agreed to go into quite significant detail into the questions they asked, how they managed around pitfalls, and really ensure that you have the opportunity to learn. Those companies are anywhere from the largest companies like a Scania to incredible fintech companies like Tink and Bambora, interesting media companies like the Viaplays of the world. And so again, leverage that opportunity to make this day special by engaging with those customers as well. One other very important aspect of our day today are our partners. And so we again talked about the power of that expo area. First and foremost, our partners make this event possible for us. I want to specifically call out and give a personal word of thanks to NordCloud, who has not only been our premier sponsor for the event today, but I can tell you has been there with us since the very beginning. In fact, I remember in the very early days when we were opening our business here, the NordCloud team was there helping us understand the Nordics, helping us make deeper connections with the community, and that commitment to partnership has not swayed, has not faltered. And so I'd encourage you to go meet the NordCloud team as well as the other 20 partners that have agreed to be here, not only to help us hold the event, but to also help you understand how their service offerings and their technologies can help you move at light speed and help use the AWS cloud. So thank you again to all of our sponsors. Something else that makes things special, and some of you may have heard a little bit of news that we announced a few weeks ago. It's incredibly special because we have decided to continue our global expansion and to build infrastructure in the Nordics, and specifically in Sweden. Yeah, thank you. As you can probably imagine, this is a very big decision by Amazon Web Services, and yet I couldn't be more excited about the opportunity that we have to work with folks like yourself to bring the power of the AWS cloud into the region and into the country. So what does this mean, you may ask? Well, what it means is that startups and enterprises, nonprofit companies, public sector agencies are now able to leverage the AWS cloud within the country and within the region. This region is going to be 3 availability zones, essentially 3 clusters of data centers that allow us to provide you extremely high-performing infrastructure that allows also for highly fault-tolerant architectures. So what that essentially means in English, for those of you in the world who may be saying, what is he talking about, is we're going to build an infrastructure for you that allows you to have multiple places to put your data, multiple opportunities to build applications that are extremely highly available, but yet don't force you to put your data in another country. It's a very important innovation that we've had a part of our platform from the very beginning 11 years ago, and we're so thrilled to be able to react to the customer feedback that we've been hearing in the Nordics and make this significant expansion. You know, the choice of Sweden was an important one. Sweden gave us the opportunity to not only meet this pressing customer demand, but it also allowed us to leverage the incredibly highly talented workforce that Sweden and frankly all of the Nordics provides. From a network and a performance perspective, there's no doubt that we were able to create a model that building in Stockholm essentially gives us a hub model where we can provide incredibly powerful infrastructure to all of the Nordics out of the Stockholm area. And obviously, very importantly, Sweden's commitment to renewable energy can't be underscored from an importance perspective. The fact that at least 53% of all of the energy in Sweden is coming from renewable sources aligns perfectly with our commitment to environmental sustainability as well. And so again, we couldn't be happier for this incredible news, not only for AWS, but for our customers in Sweden and in the Nordics. So to continue on with our concept of something special, I've got to tell you that we have a very special guest who's going to come on stage and share a little bit more about the innovation wave and the technology that we're seeing in Sweden and in the Nordics. So if you would, please help me in welcoming Minister Damberg, the Sweden Minister for Enterprise and Innovation. Mikael, can you join me up here?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Darren. Yes. Thank you. Great. First of all, great to be here as Minister for Enterprise and Innovation. I think this way. Oh, sorry. I will go back. When this presentation was made, this was like Stockholm was looking like in the winter time. But now, with the Amazon decision to actually place your regional hub here in the Nordics and in Stockholm, you've seen you brought spring to Sweden. And I think my first message is that I'm here to thank you. Thank you very much for making this investment in Sweden, in the Nordics, because we're intended to lead the way to a digital society. And we see that this investment not only is good for Sweden when it comes to investment, but it actually helps Swedish company to stay ahead in the digital shift that goes on globally right now. I think this will help firms in the Nordics to actually process data, scale up, and to compete on the world market. I will make a short introduction here on innovation the Swedish way. And I will start by showing a picture of a car. Because in Sweden we're quite proud of the Volvo car, of course. And there is a saying historically in Sweden, when something is good for Volvo, it is good for Sweden. And actually, when we look at the numbers and statistics, this is pretty much the case right now. Swedish industry is booming, and it's thanks to 2 things, I think, historically in Sweden. First, our leadership on innovation. This is why we have stayed globally competitive on global markets for so long. Traditional companies have stayed innovative, transformed their business model constantly over and over again. The second thing is Sweden is a fairly small country, only 10 million people. So we know we have to be connected to the rest of the world. We know that 99.98 of the potential customers is outside of Sweden. So we have to find partnerships, we have to find customers outside of Sweden. That's why we're open for free trade, not only goods, but also services and data flows. And in this modern economy, I think this is really relevant. So the Swedish economy is booming. I think we have now a growth rate of almost 3% this year, outperforming our competitors in Europe, United States, Germany, but also the Nordic countries. So the economy is doing a good job right now, producing new jobs as well. 200,000 new jobs since October 2014. But to stay competitive, we have to increase pace, because we see that many of our competitors are running fast. And we see the digital shift in the economy as one of the advantages that Sweden can take part of and boost both investment but also going forward, stimulating the economy going forward. So why is it so that Swedish economy has been so good at innovation? You can have the traditional story about good universities, big spending on R&D. I think that is all relevant. We have kind of a nation of engineers in Sweden. We like to solve problems in Sweden, but actually when we look at the big shifts on innovation in Sweden, it has been when Sweden has taken on great societal challenges. When we actually see what are the biggest problems in society now and how can we solve them and make an effort to the rest of the world. So when we look at the digital shift in the economy, when we look at the climate change, and when we look at the aging population, three mega trends that will transform the world and will change the economic dynamics of all countries in the world, we see that Swedish companies have a lot to offer when it comes to innovation in these three fields. And we want to partner up with traditional industry and the newcomers in the digital economy to actually solve these societal challenges. And I think Sweden has a good role in partnerships. Traditionally, we made partnership between academia, with society, with also private companies to actually solve some of the big questions of our times. Now it's time to do it again. And we actually look at how we stayed competitive. It's also about the Swedish culture of collaboration. I would say that Sweden has the black belt in structural change. We're eager to meet the future. We want to test new gadgets, new digital services. We like to try them on in Sweden, but it's also so when it comes to the labor market. We actually have the black belt in structural change on the labor market. We don't defend all jobs in Sweden, but we defend people in change, so people don't resist change and wants to be part of the future. I think this is one of the reasons why Sweden has stayed so competitive over the years, and why labor unions, for instance, in Sweden are pro-free trade. Not many trade unions in Europe or elsewhere in the world are that, but it's because of the Swedish way of transforming our economy. We pointed out 5 areas where we want to stay ahead and we want to transform the economy. We formed 5 partnership programs. When we look at the next generation of travels and transports, we look at smart cities of the future. More and more people are moving into cities around the world. We have the life sciences and the healthcare sector that is booming all over the world. We have the shift to a circular and bio-based economy where Sweden has better perhaps possibility to do this shift than any other country in the world, but also the connected industry and new materials. In these 5 areas, we see that we can meet societal challenges, on the same time taking the use of Swedish expertise and drive innovation in our country, creating test beds of new solutions in our country, but also exporting them in the next phase to the rest of the world. And we're looking for partners. And one of the biggest, I will take one example on this. How do we actually transform our society into the digital society? It is not only the digital startup scene that is exciting, that Darren mentioned before, when we're competing with Silicon Valley when it comes to producing unicorns in this town. It's actually traditional industry that has to transform. And then it's a societal issue, how we actually handle digitalization. Let me take one traditional example. Mining industry. This is a picture of Boliden in Sweden. A mining company actually trying out and testing 5G technology undergrounds to actually increase security for people working in mines, but of course also increasing productivity in the mine. This is an example how traditional industry also has to transform by digital business model and help Sweden to stay competitive in the world to come. Just to make one example, it's very practical. In mining, you use a lot of energy for ventilation systems. Actually, making smart ventilation systems in mine can save up to half the energy consumption in a mine. Do you know how much energy consumption the mining industry actually in Sweden consumes every year? 1% of Sweden's total electricity consumption. So if Swedish industry can show the world how to actually create a smart mining industry, it is good for our productivity, it's good for security for the people working in mines, but it is also a way of transforming the mining industry globally and do more export successes for the world. So this is the way, I think, how we have to, but this, one more point on this. Traditional industry cannot do this alone. They have to partner up with the digital industry and the small and medium-sized companies. So here is a collaboration with Boliden, Ericsson, ABB, but also some other big players, but also the smart digital companies that help them to actually transform their business model. And this is one of the advantages Sweden has with our big players on the global markets to actually team up with the small digital companies of Sweden, the tech wonders of Sweden. If we can do that even more in Sweden and in the Nordic countries, I think Sweden and the Nordic countries will lead the way to the digital revolution we're actually in the middle of. And I want to thank once again Amazon Web Service for making the investments here, believing in Sweden, but also helping Swedish companies to make this transformation into the future. So thank you very much for letting me be here today, but first of all, welcome to Sweden. I hope you feel very welcome for a long time to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mikael. So while we have you on stage, I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to ask a few questions that may be on people's minds. The Nordics is definitely referred to in many cases as being a unicorn factory, right? As you said, a region that really punches above its weight class, as they say. You and I had an opportunity to talk earlier over coffee about this area being maybe small in population, but gigantic in innovation. And we talked about that here at the summit last year. So I'm curious, when you take that concept of a unicorn factory into account, what do you think it is about Sweden and the Nordics that allows companies like Klarna and Vivino and Tink, Bambora, Mojang to become the leaders in their industries?
I think we have created a unique ecosystem in the Stockholm region for the tech industry. And it's different things. Of course, the digitalization of Sweden, the broadband, the Ericsson, the historic links to research and education. But more so, I think, the home PC reform of Sweden in the 90s, where actually most families actually rented or bought their home computer, and young people, especially boys, stayed at home, played computer games for a decade or two, and it really...
We've hired many of those people.
Yeah. Actually, it made kind of a cluster here that is kind of unique in the way of building up a talent pool that is really unique in the world. But also the kind of creativity of Sweden, where we're not only good at games, of computer games, but also music, culture, fashion industry. There is kind of a culture of collaboration in Sweden, but also daring to try your dreams and go for it, and do that for a long period of time. You actually create wonders. I think the culture of collaboration, but also the creativity of Sweden is kind of unique. So I hope that we can foster this kind of climate for the future, but also, once again, we're so small. So we know, all these companies know that they cannot create this for the Swedish market. They have to be born global from the start. You have to think global from the first day, and that, I think, is an advantage for the Swedish economy that is truly impressive.
Excellent. And if you were to think of your role as minister, but also the government that you're a part of, can you speak to how you think your role in the government can actually help continue to feed that level of innovation, perhaps not only specifically for startups, but also the companies like Scania, for example, large companies that have quite a legacy, but are also reinventing themselves?
First of all, I think the startup scene don't think of politics all the day. Actually, they think of the business model and they're running, so they should. But of course, we have to foster this kind of climate in Sweden. And the partnership programs, I think, is a way not only to help the big ones transform and help us solve societal challenges, that if you look at societal challenges like the climate change or the aging population, all of them needs digital solutions to actually transform our society. We have to have a healthcare system that is connected in the future. These are not only challenges and problems today, it is huge business opportunities around the world. So if we can make Sweden a test bed, which I've said is one of my mission as Minister for Enterprise and Innovation, I want the healthcare system to open up, to try new things. I want cities of Sweden to try new transportation solutions, to actually show the rest of the world what can be done. And in all these fields, of course, the traditional industry will be there, do big investments, but they need the startup scene to actually make the pace go faster, and they need the knowledge and experience from the digital side. So I think the partnership between the big ones and the small ones, I think one of the things we have to succeed with in Sweden to actually make it happen.
Excellent. And I appreciated your 5 pillars that you talked about a moment ago, and that feeds very much into the smart industry initiative that you and that your government had led. When you think about the smart industry and you think about the folks here today, can you elaborate on that a bit and perhaps help those of us that are here just maybe beginning our journey in terms of thinking about innovation? How do we all participate and play a role in your smart industry initiative?
I think you're already doing that by making your investments, because I think the cloud is one solution for many to actually help transforming their business model for the future, and also to help more companies to see what the digital revolution actually means. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about the big ones sometimes, and the big companies have all hired their research departments, digital officers looking into how to transform their business models. Some will succeed, some will not, but they're actually on the ball. But when you look at small and medium-sized companies around Sweden and the Nordic countries, many of these countries don't know what to do. They don't have anyone hired in their staff that actually know what is the next step. How shall we transform our business model? So I think that is the most crucial issue. How do we get everyone on board on this digital kind of transformation? I think there is huge successes ways those who actually dares to do the transformation, but it's a lot of cost if you don't understand what's happening right now. So that's what we try to push for in the smart industry strategy as well, reaching out to small and medium-sized companies all around Sweden, making regional conferences, talking about how have other companies done, what can you think of, what kind of experience and knowledge do you have to make the transition.
Excellent. And in preparation for you coming today, I sat down with our team and said, we're going to have Minister Damberg on the stage. What would be the most important questions for us to pose? And the most important question that came up was something about a hockey championship that starts next week, and they figure you have some kind of influence on who may win. So do you have any inputs on the outcome of that tournament?
No. I think hopefully we all win.
Perfect. Yeah. Very well said. So thank you so much, Mr. Damberg, for your support.
Thank you.
Yes. So I now have the opportunity to introduce another very special guest who's going to take us through our keynote presentation. You know, I had a fairly generic, well-crafted, PR-approved biography of this gentleman, and I'll tell you a little bit of that. But as I had the opportunity to spend some time with this gentleman yesterday and this morning, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a different flavor of who this individual is, rather than just the PR-approved biography. The PR guy in the front row is panicking right now, by the way, as he hears me say that. Don't worry. So this individual, from a biography and a background perspective, started a career as a developer, became a chief architect at a small company we know as Sun Microsystems. He departed a long and established career of being a thought leader there, and actually was a part of establishing the eBay research labs, helping ask really big, hard questions at a time when many companies maybe weren't thinking about innovation in the way that eBay was. That individual went to a small company that at that time was delivering videos, movies to you via discs that they would put into your mailbox, and that when you were done, you'd ship them back to that company. Small company we know as Netflix. And he actually drove the thinking and the innovation not only around that company's open source program, but also how to modernize a company from sending physical media to the incredible customer experience that we all know today as Netflix customers. After Netflix, this gentleman went into the venture capital world at Battery Ventures, where he played a critical role in investigating new investment opportunities, helping pinpoint entirely new companies doing interesting things. And that led me to asking this gentleman some questions when I had the chance to meet him. He had one comment this morning over coffee that I think is very applicable to what Mr. Damberg just said, as well as what we're experiencing here in Sweden. And that is his point of, when a lot of people in an economy or in a market are doing the same thing, it's time for an innovator and a disruptor to think differently and do something different. And I can't tell you how confident I am that most likely that innovator and that disruptor may be sitting in this room, but definitely is going to come from the Nordics, from my experience. Last but not least, this individual has an incredibly interesting hobby that I found out about that I thought you may enjoy hearing about. He's actually leveraged AWS to build his own cloud-powered, self-driving robotic car that he's got some great YouTube videos posted. He also has them on his phone if you get an opportunity to meet him. And not only does he play around in his driveway, but he also competes with a robotic self-driving car. So talk about really applying the cloud. I think he's definitely doing that. So with no further ado, let me once again thank you for the time you're spending with us today and introduce Mr. Adrian Cockcroft to the stage, our fairly new VP of Cloud Architecture and Strategy at AWS. Thank you so much. Adrian.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I first came to Sweden in the 1990s with Sun. I've got a lot of good friends here. Had a really good time, and come back again over the years. And well, you heard the intro, so I was going to talk to you a little bit about, I joined this little company 10 years ago, Netflix, and we were a tiny little company. We had a few hundred servers. We were a few hundred people, and a year or two later, our streaming service was taking off so fast that we couldn't really cope with building data centers fast enough. That's when we joined up with AWS. And what it really turned into was the first all-in for a large customer for AWS. And we each taught each other how to do cloud, how to do scale, a whole lot of things. Nowadays, Netflix has a few thousand engineers and around about 100,000 instances every day, normal kind of size, scaling up and down by tens of thousands of machines. That is a really interesting kind of size, because what mattered to Netflix back in the day was, is this cloud going to be big enough to take the scale that we're going to get to? When I joined Netflix 10 years ago, they had 6 million customers. They just passed 100 million customers. They're now global. And they run it all from a few thousand people in Los Gatos, California. They run a global organization. They're running all kinds of things. And so this is, you know, from what you were just hearing, from Sweden, you have the opportunity to build global businesses leveraging AWS. That is a lot of the power that we're giving you. So what we're going to hear today is a lot of educational content. This is really for us This isn't a sales or a marketing conference, this is an educational conference. I'm so happy to see a very large proportion of the audience are new to AWS. That's characteristic of every summit we do. This isn't just for the people that already know what we do, getting an update on the latest few features. This is bringing new customers in, and we share across all our customers. So you're going to hear today in my presentation from all the different things we do across all our customers, and I'll be bringing individual customers, local customers on stage to tell you how they're using AWS. Now, if you want to grow really fast and really get into a cloud, you want to be on a cloud that has room for you. You don't ever, the way cloud works, you want to make it feel elastic and make it feel infinite. You want to be a small fish in a big pond. If you're in a big pond, it's the same as an infinitely large pond, right? You don't want to be, say, a whale in a swimming pool. That's really, not a very comfortable place to be. So it's really important that we have capacity for our customers to grow. And the size that AWS has reached really is letting the largest companies in the world come to AWS and say, yeah, we can run on this. This is big enough to feel like we are a small proportion of everything that AWS is doing. So we've now reached a $14 billion run rate and growing 47%. And that's an amazing capability. We're the fastest growing multi-billion dollar company in enterprise IT with millions of active customers per month. And the fastest company in IT to get to $10 billion. So that comes in part from many of you in the audience, our existing customers, but the really key thing here is we're giving you room to grow into the AWS ecosystem. We've also supported, in the early days, the largest number of startup customers. And as was mentioned, I worked for Battery Ventures for 3 years and was out there talking to thousands of people. I mean, VC firms make tens of investments a year. They get serious about maybe a few hundred companies a year, but they talk to thousands of companies a year. And all these companies I spoke to were running on AWS. They were all going, it's not worth us building our infrastructure. It's almost incredibly hard to find somebody in the startup ecosystem that wasn't leveraging AWS, just because this is how you get to market faster. You're trying to get a new idea to market, and you want to stand on the shoulders of the tallest giant you can find and go as fast as you possibly can. That's the way you're successful in the startup space. And with some interesting local customers I'll talk about a little later, but the enterprise space is interesting because a little bit later on, as AWS developed, we started to get, Netflix was sort of an overgrown startup, not really large-scale enterprise. But as the enterprises started to come on board, they were fascinated by what was going on. And one of the reasons that I moved on from Netflix was I kept having these customers come, and people that are now big enterprise customers of AWS come and want to talk to me about what are you doing and how does this work and how does this scale and how can we leverage the cloud the way you have. That became such an interesting problem to solve that was one of the reasons I joined Battery Ventures. I went out because they gave me a platform to go and talk to lots of customers and find out, the goal there was to see if we could figure out which startups they wanted to buy from. But I had to talk to lots of enterprises. And you can see here some of the local customers like Basware, who you'll hear from a little bit later, and Scania, and Viaplay. Now, and Tomra. So we're going to have them coming on stage a little bit later. Now, public sector is another area. We have big investments supporting universities, research departments, government agencies around the world. And on top of that, one of the things that these large organizations say is, we need help getting to cloud. They want to shut a whole data center. And what does it take to do that? They don't have the people, they don't have the training. So we have this huge system of partner system of systems integrators and premier consulting partners. And I want to call out Nordcloud again, as was mentioned, for supporting this conference, and all of the smaller organizations that we have around the world. There are some multinational global organizations and there are smaller organizations, but we have an incredibly powerful network of people who have been through this before. So if you're starting out and you're going, I don't know how to get the expertise, you can bring in a partner and they will go, okay, we've done this 5 or 6 times now, this is how you do it. And the AWS professional services will come in as well. So we can help you get started, and it turns out it's actually easier to learn than data center technology. The trouble with data center technology is expensive, it's hard to get, it takes you a long time. You can't just go and play with it yourself. The thing about the cloud is this democratizing principle. You can just fire up AWS in an evening on your own personal account, and for basically nothing, because we have a free tier for playing around, you can investigate all kinds of things. You can become an expert in your spare time. This principle has really made it very easy for people to get on board. And then we have ISVs. We have a huge ecosystem for solving all kinds of problems. So I need to get through these slides. We've got a lot to cover today. So just quickly, AWS is positioned as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for cloud, the highest in execution, furthest in vision. But we're seeing an evolution. A few years ago, we said this is the new normal. We've now got to the point where enterprises and startups are going, cloud is just the way we expect to be doing things. In 2015, we started talking about giving you control over your own destiny. But the way we're talking about it now, we want to give you superpowers. And this is the rest of the thing. We're going to go through all the different superpowers that we're going to give you. But think of this as, say, let's say you're in a James Bond movie, you're James Bond, all our customers are James Bond. We want to hear all the different things, the problems you've got, we want to hear the challenges you're working on. But we want to be Q. We want to be, okay, we're going to give you the fastest car, we're going to give you the best guns, the best equipment, the best radio equipment, all of the things that James Bond needs to run around the world being James Bond, right? But you get to be James Bond and we get to be the provider that gives you all of those things. So that's why we want to give you superpowers. And we're going to start off with supersonic speed. Because really, the reason that we want to go to cloud in the first place was for speed. We can't afford to take months to get a machine anymore. It takes minutes. You can't afford to spend ages doing POCs and trying to benchmark and trying to figure out how to build a database that works and scales. That should be, just as a service. It just should come straight up. So once we've got supersonic speed, we need to look at how are we giving you all of these different features. So because one of the things that AWS is good at internally is our engineering teams are themselves running at supersonic speed. A lot of companies slow down as they get bigger. As they get more successful, the pace of innovation starts to slow down. AWS is accelerating. As we get bigger and bigger, we put more and more money into engineering, and we're just generating more features. So we are accelerating away from our competitors and we're basically addressing a larger and larger area of the market. So over 1,000 new features and services last year, up from 700, up from 500. Back when I was first at Netflix moving to AWS was 2009, 2010. Look at the features that we had available then. Nowadays, you've got a huge range of things that you can use. It's much easier now than it was then. So this is what it looks like. We have this huge chart here of all of these different things. So I'm going to dig into a couple of areas here. In particular, I want to just highlight along the top we have the technical and business support, and underneath that is a marketplace. That means you can get pre-built solutions on AWS that just go and hunt around and find your ISVs, and that marketplace is becoming a really interesting area. We now have 35 categories, more than 3,500 software listings, and it grew 112% last year. So really make sure you're leveraging the marketplace, and if you are an ISV, make sure your solution goes into the marketplace. It's a great way for customers to discover you. As we're getting more and more ISVs, as you saw, there were so many logos on that chart, that being discoverable is important. But I'm going to drill in a little bit in one area. developer experience. We want our developers to be able to go really fast. How quickly can you build a system? Well, continuous development today, you have to hand configure a bunch of things. We're giving you a lot of tools, but when somebody sits down and says, I need to start a new project, how quickly can you put it all together? I remember when I was at Netflix trying to get my laptop configured to just, I think we spent a week trying to get Eclipse configured and all of these things, just so I could write a little bit of Java because, I was mostly not a developer, but every now and again I had to do a little bit. So what we've just come out with, and this was announced a week or two ago, is AWS CodeStar. Generally available. This gathers it all together and gives you a way to create an entire development pipeline in just a few clicks. So it's an integrated console for developers. It gets you, in a few minutes, you can start developing. It manages your delivery, and it also supports your teams. So there's a template. You can see a number of things here: Ruby on Rails, Java, Spring, Node, different languages and frameworks. You basically pick, this is the set of things I want to work on. Say, okay, that's it. Put all this together for me. You then configure your IDE. We have Visual Studio, Eclipse, command line. We'll be taking suggestions from everybody on what we want to do next here, but this is easy. And then you basically start coding. You're done. You're off to the races, and you can be building things. This is an incredibly easy way to get everyone up to speed and just save all of that time trying to configure your environment. So that's really powerful. But then going back to this huge setup here, we've got, let's look at the infrastructure, the services we have for providing capacity. So compute, storage, networking. This is the core. And just to understand the way we have this laid out around the world, we currently have 16 regions, and each region has 3 zones, mostly. Some have 2, some have 3. Some actually, I think, US East now has 5, but there's 42 zones. A zone is a group of data centers. It's not just a few racks in a building somewhere. Each zone, think of them as tens of miles apart. It's very hard to have a common problem happen to a building that's 10 miles away from another building. It's got unique power, it's got unique geography, it's very unlikely to get flooded or have an earthquake hit it or have a fire take it out, something like that. So these zones are extremely well separated, but they're close enough together that you can do synchronous replication. You can write your data to all 3 places and say, okay, I'm safe. I have my data in 3 places. They're tens of miles apart. That is the way to think about a zone. And as was mentioned, we have 2 new regions coming on soon. The last one I think we came up with, the last 2 we came up with were the UK and Canada. We just announced that we announced last year that we're going to add Paris fairly soon. So we'll have a region in France. And we've got a second region in China coming up, and Stockholm coming next year. You're just going to see us continue to crank out more regions around the world. So each region, it gives you a geographic location. We never move your data from a region. So if you put your data in a region, you know it's in that country, it will never move unless you explicitly move it. That's the way we think about regions. And we update software across regions very independently to keep everything separate, so that if we have a new version of something, we try it out in one region before we take it around the world and really make sure that we're being extremely careful how we roll things out. That way, our regions are extremely independent of each other. So if we dig into all of these core services, we have compute, databases, security, network. We have an enormous amount of functionality here. One thing that we started getting really deeply into just in the last year or so is IPv6 support. We have that now deep into all of our capabilities. Very important, particularly in the mobile space. And then there's a lot of things in here to support security for auditability. Particularly, we're finding financial services organizations driving us in this space. So key usage auditing, things that bring your own key kind of capabilities for giving you the ability to run extremely secure systems that are fully compliant for running extremely large and critical services. But let's dig into compute. We have a lot of capability here. And what I have here is really a whole range of things. From one end, Lightsail. This is a simple VPS service. Just want to stand up a WordPress blog or your high school's website or Minecraft server or something like that. All of these kinds of things, you want to have a predictable, simple model where you pay a certain amount, and that is a fixed bill per month that's very predictable and simple, and gives you the ability to not worry about trying to sort of configure everything. So it's got a simple sign-up page, and we're just trying to make it simpler for people to do simple things. That launched in Ireland and London and Frankfurt in February. No, that was Lightsail, sorry. Trying to get all these different services. That was announced in December. Yeah. So I'm going to talk a bit about the i3 actually next. Oops, sorry. Get this button back. I thought I was going to get some more clicks. Anyway, the i3, which launched in Ireland and around in February, is a new high I/O capable instance type. The i2, which had been out for a little while, is a pretty powerful machine. It lets you do about 300,000 I/Os a second per machine. And that's pretty good, but the i3 lets you do over 3 million I/Os per second per instance, which is just ludicrous amount of capacity. You put that in a large cluster, it's pretty hard to envision being able to use that much I/O capability. And there's a lot of interesting things you can do there, building caching layers. It's very low latency. The other one that's interesting here is the P2. It's a GPU system with 16 cores, 16 GPU cores on it. Each core is over 4 teraflops. This is 70 teraflops of capacity in a single instance. How many people here, if you go back to your data center people and say, please can I have a machine with 70 teraflops to play around with for a few hours? You're not going to get a particularly great response from your team. But we have these available, and you can use them for training of deep learning systems or running high-end, high-performance computing applications. And then the X1, it's not just large memory, it's 2 terabytes of memory. This was originally put out in partnership with SAP for running SAP HANA and those sort of in-memory databases, but it turns out that we just made it available for anything. You could run a bazillion Docker containers on there if you wanted to. It doesn't really matter what you'd run on it. But again, what happens if you go to your IT department and say, I just need a machine with a couple of terabytes of RAM to play around with for a few hours? It's not a good experience. So we have this incredible capability to speed up your ability to innovate, to try out things. And this was one of the most liberating things I found in my time at Netflix, was the ability to run really large-scale, interesting experiments, which only needed to last for a few hours. They don't cost much to run, but you can learn a huge amount incredibly quickly. And then at the bottom, we have this new capability, elastic GPUs. That means if you need a GPU for some reason, on any of these instance types, you can attach it. So you don't have to pick the ones that have a GPU built in. They're now available as a general capability that can be attached to an instance in the same way as you might want to mount a disk. And then this one on the right, F1. So how many people here are hardware designers? It's not generally a thing in the audience at an AWS event, but if you know somebody where if you talk to them about Verilog and VHDL and things like that and their eyes don't glaze over, I actually have a book at home, FPGA Programming for Dummies. A friend of mine wrote a version of this thing, and it's not for dummies. It's probably the least appropriate dummies book you could find. It's a very specialized thing. But the F1 instance gives you the ability to build custom hardware designs and embed them in your system. And this just went to GA recently. How does this work? So hardware designers will design an FPGA accelerator, they'll package it up into an image, and then they'll put it in the marketplace. Remember I told you about the marketplace before? That part of the marketplace will have the FPGA F1 type instances in it. What can you do with these? Genomics research, financial analytics, real-time video processing, and search and analytics. Now, the video processing is 30 times faster than the normal way of doing video processing. This is live analysis of video streams in faster than real time. And there are some interesting applications for that, maybe live broadcasts, sports analysis, things like that. I don't know, all kinds of things you might want to do. Anyway, We have a number of customers that are achieving supersonic speed with us that are going incredibly fast. I've spent a bunch of time working with Capital One over the last few years. They are really, for a large bank, they are going so quickly. The other banks are just going, how are they going that fast? They've really taken full advantage of AWS and dived in. They're doing DevOps. They have a cellular-based organization going incredibly quickly. It's very interesting to see. And I want to bring up one of our customers here, Basware, next. And company that's been going really interesting. It's a Finnish software company, a global leader in providing networked purchase-to-pay solutions. And I'm going to bring on stage Ilari Numi, Senior Vice President from Basware. Come on up. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian, and good morning on my behalf as well. Like I said, my name is Ilari Nurmi, and I'm an executive team member at Basware and responsible for our enterprise software products. Basware is a Finnish stock-listed software company with 1,800 employees, customers in over 100 countries, and own operations in 14, from US to western and northern part of Europe, all the way down to Australia. And we operate in a fintech space in building solutions for that enable our customers to streamline and simplify their operations in procurement and in invoice processing. And today, many companies have very inefficient processes for procurement and for invoicing. These are plagued with lack of visibility, a lack of control, poor user experience, and in many parts of the globe, still very much costly paper-based processes. And Basware services solve these problems and help enterprise customers to manage the procurement process and the account payable process by providing an industry-leading cloud-based purchase-to-pay solution. And we do also connect the buyers with their suppliers through a commerce network that we run that enable them to transact with each other, send and receive purchase orders and invoices between the companies. Today in the Basware network we have over 1 million companies that are transacting, and we have thousands of enterprise customers, from the very large Fortune 500 type of customers like ABB and Heineken, all the way down to a mid-sized enterprises using our purchase-to-pay software. For Basware, one of the prime reasons to go to cloud was to simplify our infrastructure stack. We've been previously an on-site software vendor, have moved to cloud or to the SaaS model. We've made a number of acquisitions along the years. And as an end result, our technology stack has been very heterogeneous. We've had a number of services running on Microsoft stack, number of Linux boxes, and so on and so forth. And the move to AWS has given us an opportunity to consolidate the multiple cloud services into one and to integrate the services through a shared technology stack. The second reason that we were looking for or second benefit that we were looking for to focus our own development and engineering resources into the real value add, our own applications and the industry-specific work that we need to do. Many areas where we would have had to spend time, under the hood developing capabilities, we can now get from AWS automatically. And as a third item, Basware is operating today in a very much in a growing and evolving market. Our SaaS revenue grew last year by 95%, and with AWS, we're able to enable that top-line growth and enable our services to scale with the growing customer demand. So we made a corporate-wide decision to move to AWS roughly 12 months ago after an extensive evaluation process. We've taken a leap, and we are basically executing on that track. And as part of that effort, then a very large number of AWS services are today in use at Basware. The first services with AWS went live with the customers last summer, 3 months after the decision. And many major services like the Basware's electronic invoicing network has been moved to AWS in a lift and shift fashion. And we've since then optimized the processes further. Now we've implemented a cloud-native approach where, for instance, auto-scaling comes now part of the package, and we moved from self-managed databases to Amazon RDS, and are moving more and more services to AWS as we speak. One of the key reasons why we went for AWS was the good service footprint combined with the affordability. For example, only with the database service, we are today getting 2 to 3 times the performance improvement compared to our previous service. We're also very convinced about the security capabilities of AWS. Obviously, in our business, security matters a whole lot. Examples of this include obviously an extensive amount of certifications, but also data-addressed encryption as a sort of tick box item, easy cross-data center replication capabilities, improved disaster recovery capabilities, and more. And third important benefit or thing to mention would be the happiness around ecosystem around AWS. Because AWS is so broadly used, there are lots of articles, lots of help available from other software vendors that are using AWS and are sharing their experiences. Also, the supplementary services from the AWS ecosystem partners play a major role within our deployment. Today, for example, in the form of a VPN and an antivirus solutions. So what's in the future? We are building more value stemming out from the cloud-based invoice data that we have in our solutions. Last year alone, more than 500 billion euros worth of invoices were processed with the Basware solutions. And thus, one of the major development items that we are looking at is around big data, machine learning, artificial intelligence. The capabilities to leverage that data for better customer insights and new services for our customers. Specifically, we're looking at improved centralized data warehouse capabilities on Redshift, and we're looking at ready-made machine learning and artificial intelligence capabilities from AWS partners. At Basware, we today have hundreds of smart developers building innovative solutions for our customers. And with AWS and the AWS ecosystem present here today as well, we are able to accelerate the speed of innovation even further.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we've got you to go really fast, but you also want to be able to see where you're going. And X-ray vision is the next superpower I'm going to talk about. And really, this is around analytics and making sense of your data. So split this into 3 sections. You've got historical data. You need to figure out where you're coming from. Okay? Use Redshift for a data warehouse. Use QuickSight to visualize that and get your business intelligence, and then Athena for doing ad hoc queries against S3. So that's mostly backwards looking. And then bridging between real-time and backwards looking, we have EMR, which gives you Hadoop and all of that ecosystem, which is a little more batch-oriented or historical, but also things like Spark that get you to do real-time analytics. And then we add to that Kinesis for log streaming and Elasticsearch for building real-time indexing on top of that. And finally, we have machine learning, which lets you look into the future and decide, be able to predict what might happen next. So let's look at Athena. It's an interesting new capability we came out with recently. You can query S3 directly. You don't have to pull your data out. It's basically a serverless mechanism for accessing your data. You don't need any infrastructure to set up. Gives you results in seconds, and you just pay for the queries you run. So this is a very wonderful way of doing ad hoc queries against sort of unstructured data. Really, we've got a bunch of customers who've been using it already, but the really neat thing here is that you don't have to think about how many servers do I need to run. It's excellent for the times when you're not sure how often or who's going to ask for what kind of data, but you've got a huge pile of data that you want to access. Now we've got three different capabilities here. We've got Redshift for a data warehouse. When data warehouse queries are much more structured, they're much more optimal. They may be 10, 20 times faster than an unstructured query. So they're for things that you're going to be doing these queries over and over again. This is the kind of queries it takes to run a business, right? That's what gives in your data warehouse. You've got EMR for doing sort of massive analysis, for log analysis and things like that. One of the first users that I came up with when I was at Netflix for Hadoop, we were playing around with it back in 2008, 2009 when it first came out. And the log data we were getting from monitoring the customer's quality of service, all the data that was coming out of that, just flooded our ability to cope with it in any other way. So we got into this very early, and we're using EMR as one of the first customers. And, this has been said a few times. I once described Netflix as a system for filling up log disks that will occasionally show you a movie. And that's actually kind of the way it works. If you're really building something that is a systems of engagement capability with your customers, monitoring what those customers are doing and how they're behaving and the experience they're getting is actually quite a huge amount of the work you need to do, actually delivering the product. And if you just deliver it blindly, you're missing the point here. When you're directly connected to your customers, you want to make huge sense of it. And then Athena, giving you ad hoc queries. So let's look at Redshift again. Pulls together data, it's highly structured, it lets you do very complex queries across large petabyte scale databases, and it's, like I say, it's 20 times faster than ad hoc queries. And customers love it. It's one of the fastest growing services that we came up with a few years ago. Massive interest in this. But customers were asking for something else, and this is a mind-blowing thing that we announced just a week or so ago. So I'm going to tell you a bit about this. So my data's in Redshift, got petabytes of data in Redshift, but I've got all my historical data and all my raw data in S3. I really want to pull these things together. I have exabytes of data in S3, and maybe you don't personally have exabytes of data, but there are people out there who have exabytes of data. So Spectrum is a way to take your queries that you're running in Redshift, and you basically include the data that is in S3. It lets us scale up from petabytes to exabytes. Now, exabyte is a short word, right? Yeah, it's just an exabyte. You don't think about how big that is. How big is an exabyte, right? It's a billion, right? It's a billion gigabytes, right? It's 1,000 terabytes. No, it's 1,000,000 terabytes, right? So if your laptop probably doesn't have a terabyte of disk in it, so it's several million laptops worth of data, right? That you can join that data into your existing data warehouse and query it. So we ran a test, which meant that we did actually create an exabyte-sized table in S3. I actually was talking to the engineering team last week. Yes, they really did do this. They went out and I don't know how long it took or how much it cost and how long they kept it, but they made an exabyte-sized data table and ran this query. And the first thing they did was feed it to a 1,000-node Hadoop cluster running Hive, and they started running the test, and they looked as though this is going to take a little while. This is like a 5-year-long query. It's just, yeah, well, you know, but it's crunching through. It was getting there. It would have got there in the end. You know, Hadoop and Hive are very resilient to retrying stuff and whatever. And then they ran it in Spectrum, and it took 155 seconds, which is just ludicrous. Like, I just looked at an exabyte of data in less than 3 minutes and got a query with all of these tables and joins. It's a staggering capability. Fascinated to see what our customers do with this over time, but we already have some customers using it, but really fascinated to find out what people do when they can just trawl through all of their historical data and figure out what's there without having to pull it out and shuffle it around. Okay, you can basically do this by sort of having your dimension tables in Redshift, in your fact tables, and there's all these different things you can do. But you can have the things that are commonly accessed in Redshift, and then have just your historical data, all the records of everything you ever sold or whatever it is. All of your IoT logs or something like that can be off in S3. Okay, next I'm going to bring up another customer. Tomra, they're leading the resource revolution. They are a Norwegian multinational corporation doing recycling solutions. Many of you, I'm sure, already know Tomra for their reverse cycling thing of giving back a plastic bottle that you've used up. But I'd like to bring on Alexander Mortensen, SVP of Collection Solutions, to tell you how they're using AWS. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexander, and I'm thrilled to be here to share a little bit of the journey we are on within Tomra to move into the cloud with AWS. I hope you all use our reverse vending machines when you go to the supermarket to do recycling. Tomra is a company with a mission to create sensor-based solutions for optimal resource productivity. We have 75,000 machines now installed in supermarkets around the world. They collect around 35 billion used beverage containers every year, and we have around 2 billion consumer sessions doing that for us. We are part of the Tomra group, founded in 1972 in Norway, and I have something like 3,300 colleagues around the world, and we operate in more than 50 countries. So, I represent Tomra Collection Solutions Digital, which is a relatively new unit in our company, and we develop and we offer Tomra Connect to our customers. Tomra Connect aims to complement and extend the value of both using and owning a Tomra reverse vending machine. And we do that across a group of products, from control to analytics, in-store marketing, consumer engagement, and of course a lot of technical services for our internal use. Today, we have something like 30,000 machines. It's constantly growing now, connected to our Tomra Connect servers. They report a heartbeat minimum every 180 seconds. And of course, they also send consumer session data and event data as it happens. We have something like 2 million daily recycling sessions registered into the system, and that generated in April 1.25 billion containers. And we store all the characteristics, the barcode, the shape, the material, the weight, when it was, in which store, on what machine, etc. So it's a lot of data on a lot of beverage containers we have in our systems. The portfolio that we offer to our customers includes all the normal things that you see in these offerings today. We have a lot of analytics to understand the past, to move forward in a better way. We have our portal. We use it for fleet view. You can have a retail chain with 3,000 machines perhaps. They have real-time status of all the machines going on in the portal. In-store marketing for promotion on the screen, couponing programs and donation towards consumers. We identify consumers through our consumer engagement program and integrate that with retailers' loyalty schemes to promote recycling. And of course, also the latest product is Notify and Assist, launched this year and built to run on our AWS infrastructure. It's a real-time tool for store personnel with in-app notifications on events and also a graphical user interface with context-based assistance. So we offer quite a large portfolio of different solutions for maybe a product that you do not normally consider very advanced. Our big challenge and our big opportunity is connected to connectivity. And we started out as an early adopter of machine-to-machine communication with dial-up connectivity in 1985. That grew over time until 2006 when Germany introduced recycling laws. And suddenly we had a big spike in connectivity. And then we had to start working on an IP-based IoT structure, basically in 2005. And now we see we are at the point where connectivity is going to go through the roof, and we are going to have 50, 60, 70,000 machines connected in the next couple of years. That will increase our data volumes. We will have scaling issues on our legacy systems. And of course, modern machines also communicate a lot more data, a lot more real-time services, etc. So we had to do something to keep up with this. We use AWS today. We've done so for about 18 months. We do data collection from all these RVMs, all these reverse vending machines, to our on-premise servers in Europe and in the US. We have 3 environments, and there we do data validation, and then we put it into the right data stores, and we forward data to our AWS environments in Frankfurt and in US East, where we basically offer new services. And we use the possibilities that we find in the managed services in the Amazon clouds to basically open up our data to our users. Today we run Kubernetes clusters on EC2 auto-scaling groups in multiple regions. We use Amazon Kinesis for real-time data processing. And we also use DynamoDB as our managed data store. On top of that, we utilize a lot of the more supporting services like Route 53, ELBs, and also the notification service to fuel our notification service for the Notify and Assist app that we are rolling out to retailers right now. In the last 18 months, we have already seen clear benefits. We see freedom for our system administrators. There is no need now for us to really invest a lot and to build data centers to deliver our services, because we can reduce the activity on the centers we have and then move new services into the AWS clouds. Freedom for developers, basically the ability to provision infrastructure on demand and without a permanent commitment to experiment while testing, while building, and while implementing infrastructure. We also have, as mentioned earlier today, availability of services, competence and support from AWS itself, from the marketplace, and from the partners. And avoiding big bang replacement of legacy services. We can do it gradually. Moving forward, we will expand using new managed services. We will move more functionality into our AWS clouds as we grow and learn more about it as well. We will rethink our data structures and offer both structured and unstructured analytics tools to our users. We will introduce predictive maintenance and machine learning solutions to help keep these 75,000 machines with compactors and printers and main boards up and running. Huge opportunities there. And then, when complete, we will then possibly switch also data collection and basic operational data stores over to our new infrastructure. But that we will do when we are ready for it and the time is right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexander. Okay, so I'm going to move on to another superpower. I'm going to talk about precognition. I mentioned Amazon Machine Learning, which has been out for a few years, but we're going beyond that now. We're starting to get into the machine learning, artificial intelligence, and deep learning space. We want to be able to predict, see, speak, hear, and understand what is going on in our data and in the systems that we have around us. First of all, we have Amazon ML, as I mentioned, but we also have a deep learning AMI. This is pre-installed with all of the things you need for doing deep learning, all of the different frameworks that you might have heard of. They're mostly open source. It's got drivers for all of the optimized drivers for the P2, for all of the different accelerations, and we do a lot of performance tuning on this, and it just makes it easy to get going. So if you're doing core deep learning work at the sort of framework level, then with MXNet or Caffe or Theano or TensorFlow, that kind of thing, it's all pre-installed here. But we want to make it easier to use as well. So we want to be able to train things, take your data from S3 and Redshift, feed it through ML, and then build yourself a custom prediction API. So that's suitable for saying you're doing a sales system and you want to be able to predict what customers should be looking at for a recommendation system. But we want to do deep learning models as well with the AMI, and this is much more for looking at the ability to classify and recognize things. And the self-driving cars use these kinds of techniques, and you can go build just about anything with this, but there's a lot of capabilities here for building a much more CPU-intensive ways of processing raw data. You can feed binary data like images and large objects into the deep learning system, and it'll figure out what the patterns are in there that it can recognize. Whereas a machine learning system is more based off of a small number of numbers or characters that are being used to classify something. So moving on from there, we want to be able to see what's going on. We have a product called Recognition that we came out with recently, and it's very simple. This is so simple that anyone can use it. I like to think this is like taking all this incredibly complex stuff, which you really kind of have to have a PhD in deep learning to understand, and turning it into something that anyone can do. You show Recognition a picture, and it tells you what's in the picture. You show it a picture with people in it, and it says there's faces, it tells you the age range, there's all these kinds of things. And we have a new capability that just came out, because if you're letting customers upload images to your system, one of the problems you have is image moderation. So, for example, if you want to be got the hunky guy there, but suggestive male swimwear underwear, it basically says, no, do you want to have this on your site? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But at least you know you can classify that there is maybe adult content or things like that in the images coming in. So this is the kind of capabilities that as we develop Recognition, we're just retraining it continuously. We're feeding it more and more pictures. Effectively, the more you use it, the better it gets, and the more we keep feeding, the more data we feed it, the better it gets. So this is just increasing the scope of what it can recognize and the accuracy of what it can recognize. And it's trivial. You say, here's a bunch of images, and it gives you back some JSON objects with the fields filled out with the different probabilities in it. So that's great. Now let's talk about voice processing. So if you want to have your system talk to you, you give it text, you push a button, it generates the results. You can actually play with this on the console. You can type in strings and type in the words and have it speak to you. And we've got a lot of different languages here. You can customize what is said, you customize how it's said, the different voices, there are accents. We've got support for whispering voices now, and we've got support for speech marks so that you can say quote things and it will figure everything out. So this is giving us the ability to just either, you can just once you've stored the output of Poly, it just gives you an MP3 file. You can embed it in an application. If you have fixed output, there's no usage fees. It's just a one-time conversion. But you can also use this for continuously reading things to you. And there's a lot of applications here in mobile where you have, maybe you're driving and you don't want to have somebody looking at the screen. You want to be able to tell them what they should be doing next, those kinds of things. Very powerful system, but really, really easy to use. So the next thing is we want to be able to listen to what people are saying, and we want to understand. So we have Amazon Lex. Now, some of you may have heard of the Alexa box, which is the Amazon Echo has a service in it called Alexa, which is a voice recognition system that we've turned into a consumer appliance. If you forget the A at the beginning and the end of Alexa, you get Lex. And this is the same service available to be embedded in anything you want to build, a mobile app, your very own appliance, your car, whatever. And you can train it with sequences of things that it should be recognizing for any domain. We've actually, I don't have the slides for it here, but we built a call center on top of this, Amazon Connect, which is a complete call center application built on top of Lex and Poly with all the telecom integration that you'd need to have real people hooked up behind a service. And this is the kind of thing we like to do at AWS. We like to take something that's fairly complex, like a call center, and turn it into something that you sign up in a few minutes, you configure it, you configure the voice dialogues, and then we charge you by the minute for your use of it. It's so much easier to get everything up and running that way. So Lex, you develop in the console, you trigger Lambda functions out of it. I'll tell you more about Lambda later. Multi-step conversations, it keeps getting better and better the more we use it. And there are enterprise connectors for things like Salesforce or Zendesk. So if you're using this to automate your sales operations or your support operations, all of the hooks are in there to connect everything in. And this we announced it as a preview last December, and it went into GA a few weeks ago. Got a lot of people using Amazon AI in production right now. Obviously, Netflix uses it for recommendations to help you find content that you'd want to see. We've got local people like Duolingo and Nuna Health using it. And I want to bring on Scania next because they're driving the shift towards a sustainable transport system. And they're using predictive analytics to be able to help figure out how to do maintenance on their truck fleets and many other applications. So I'm going to bring up Jonas Östergren now to tell you about that. Hi there. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I just want to ask the audience about how many of you have heard about our company before. Please raise your hand. Very good. Then we have a very skilled audience here. Tremendous. Scania. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jonas Östergren. I've been working within Scania for 26 years now. It's a great company because of the size of it. So you have different career options. And we are focusing quite heavily on personal development. Today I'm responsible for an organization called Infrastructure Delivery. And in that organization we have the cloud responsibility. Scania is a world-leading provider of transport solutions. We offer a wide range of products like trucks, buses, engines, but also services. We have an extensive service offering with workshop services, connected vehicle services, financial services, but also driver training and coaching. We are a global company. We are part of Volkswagen Group. With 46,000 employees, we operate in more than 100 countries. Last year, we celebrate our 125th year as a company. At the same time, we released our new next generation trucks, the one you can see on the picture. With it, we won the International Truck of the Year 2017. Today we are in transformation from our internal IT deliveries in our own data centers. So we have two objectives for us to go into the cloud. We have already today more than 250,000 connected vehicles, which we collect real-time data from. With the data we can run remote diagnostics to predict maintenance and to avoid downtime for our customers. We can also optimize fuel consumption, and we can also offer tracking to our customers of their fleet. But we start to reach our limitation in our data centers. So we have to move to the cloud for that reason. But it's also that we want to move from a manufacturer to a service and solution provider. And to be successful in that transformation, the cloud is the key component for us. But we also have our own internal IT, our own hosting within our own data centers. And of course we want to optimize that one as well at the same time. And that means to decrease lead times through automation, achieve a higher level of flexibility, but also to decrease cost. To accelerate and speed up our transformation from internal IT, we have established a new line organization called Cloud Adoption. Cloud Adoption should be the enabler for us in our transformation journey towards the cloud, and with our company target and objectives to be the #1 leader in transport systems. The Cloud Adoption team should help the rest of the organization to move to the cloud. So they are the enabler. And it's a mixed organization of different skills with developers and infrastructure resources. So we need to combine infrastructure with development, so we are building the right and most effective pipelines for our developers. This function has been in production since 1st of November, so we are quite new now, so we need to speed up and accelerate. So far we have created the platform foundation. We have done some extensive training for more than 100 engineers. We have also done a lot of introduction within our organizations, since we are a big organization. We have currently 20 to 30 development teams in this transformation, mainly connected to our objective to be the leader in transport solutions. Some of the benefits working with AWS is of course the mature service portfolio they have, but also the number of different platforms we would like to utilize. For us it's a key to work in agile and also with innovation. Since we are a global company, the global availability is also important. Today we have more than 250,000 connected vehicles. We collect a lot of data. We will collect more data with more frequent. We will also connect more trucks and vehicles over time. And to be handled that load of data, we also need to scale up. So scalability is the key for us to be successful in this transformation. From the beginning, we have worked very close with AWS professional services, just to avoid mistakes and speed up and accelerate in our transformation. For our future, we will of course continue our digitalization journey and our transformation. We will see more of connected vehicles, more of connected data and collecting data. autonomous vehicles and electrified vehicles. But we will also challenge our internal IT delivery through more and lift and shift functionality. But we need to adapt over time. Historically, we have done a lot of things ourselves within our own data centers. So we have our processes, our way of working. We need to challenge those. So we need to adapt over time. We need to adapt our organization, processes, methods. But also to be successful, it's very, very important to focus on the training of our staff. Thank you for listening. If you're looking for new opportunities, please visit our website, scania.com, and you have many different open vacancies there you can look for. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you.
All right, well, as was mentioned in the introduction, I've been playing around a little bit myself with my own self-driving car. It's about this big, has a Raspberry Pi stuck in it and a camera, and it tries to find its way around little racetracks. And this is a part of me trying to get up to speed with deep learning, and I really want you to think about how easy it is with this sort of idea that democratizing access to technology is something the cloud does and the open source does. The toolkits, everything you need to do these things, to play around with them as just a project in your spare time, it's all open source. The hardware you need to access is available by the hour for very low amounts of money. So you can go and learn this stuff. But I know a lot of you are thinking, well, all this sort of deep learning, all this artificial intelligence is all very well, but I'm stuck in a legacy environment. I've got technical debt. What my real problem I have every day is I'm trying to escape the systems I already have. So let's give you the power of flight, the ability to escape from some of your legacy environments. And let's particularly talk about some of the databases that we're stuck into. Really old, expensive databases, they're proprietary, there's huge amounts of lock-in, there's punitive licensing. And the salespeople sit around going, hey, we need to pop our targets this quarter. Which customer are we going to go audit so we can go and find out how to get a bit more money out of them? That's not a very nice environment, and it's very different to the way that we approach our customers. We're partners, we want to help you get better, and we want to help you save money, because every time we figure out a way to save our customers money, new applications become viable. We find that we end up with much more usage every time we figure out how to save you money. So that's why we cut our prices all the time. We've had 60 price cuts over the last 10 years since we've been running. But what we're finding is customers are moving to open database engines. They're moving to MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB. And we've built some interesting tools for doing this. We have a migration service. This service has migrated over 22,000 databases. It can do on-prem and AWS. It can do either way. We're not just one way or the other. You can migrate whatever you need. It migrates between different types of databases. It does automated schema conversion. And it does data replication for zero downtime. So you can basically continuously replicate rather than just doing it a one-off. Just keep copying data over. A very powerful capability. And we keep adding new data sources, new database types, new types of schema conversion. It gets better and better over time. Now, what we found, though, was from our customers, they said, well, what we really need is a capability to run some of the more larger, vertically scaled databases. And all this master-slave stuff in between zones is kind of a pain to deal with. Can you just handle that for us? So we came out with Aurora. The speed and availability of a commercial database with cost-effectiveness of open source. It's exactly the same schemas. It's MySQL. Everything you're doing is MySQL, except that it gives you 5 times the performance at a 1/10 of the cost of running this kind of thing on-premise. And it's the fastest growing AWS service we've ever released. We have huge adoption of this. It's a really powerful service. And just recently we've come out with a new version of this. Postgres. It turns out that when you're doing schema conversion and you're trying to convert from systems like Oracle, for example, Oracle to MySQL, you can do the conversion some of the time, but it's much easier to convert to Postgres. So we find this was a big demand from our customers. They wanted to do schema conversion. We're targeting Postgres as the outcome. So this is, again, it's a triple replicated backend. It's the same backend as the MySQL Aurora, but it's incredibly powerful. It automatically replicates your data for you, and you don't have to think about this. You just fire it up and go. So, and preview available today. So this was, we announced it in December, and a week or so ago, last week at this summit in San Francisco, we announced that it's now available for open preview, right? So anyone can access it now. We have a few customers that have already been using this and doing a lot of migrations. I'm going to move on quickly, I think, here, to make sure we don't run out of time. So move on to, let's look at another area. Let's look at invisibility. What do we want to make invisible? Well, we want to make infrastructure invisible. People are breaking things up into microservices, the small independent building blocks. They give you independent scaling, deployments, security, and fault isolation. But it's quite a lot of work to manage them. You're also seeing that containers are supporting these microservices. And when you get into containers, there's a few challenges. You've got cluster management to work on, scaling, fault tolerance, and securing your environment. So we want to give you a way to make these problems invisible, make them go away. And ECS is our solution for this, the EC2 container service. Because your container management, a registry, you don't have to manage the infrastructure under it. You get access to EBS, things like that. Integrates with IAM. This is really important. For particularly enterprise customers, there are roles that have been set up that say certain people should be able to do certain things, and certain applications should be able to do certain things, and they should have keys for accessing this S3 bucket or this DynamoDB or these other services. And those things go all the way down into the container with ECS. They don't just stop at the instance level. The individual containers are part of the IAM roles. It's a very important way of getting the proper integration that you need to build a secure system. So we have all of these tools for doing this. It's container registry and application services. But let's have a quick look at ECS. We've got a bunch of customer examples here. And Expedia, I think 75% of all their applications are on ECS. And they're doing 4 billion requests per hour on ECS. So they're running really heavily. But you know, even with this, we really want to take your systems. I mean, even with ECS, you're running on top of a server. We want to make the server go away. Let's sort of just fade it out. So we just don't even have to think about the servers we're running underneath. And so there's a new paradigm coming out called serverless. And with serverless, you just say, here's my code, please run it when there's something that needs it to run. So most of the time, your code isn't even launched anywhere. It's not occupying memory. It's not sitting on a machine. But when a request comes in, we start it for you very, very quickly in a few milliseconds or tens of milliseconds and get it to run for you. So there's no provisioning. It scales with usage. All of your machines are always, well, all of your functions are 100% busy. So this is a way to get 100% utilization from your infrastructure by not having any infrastructure, but the services that you're running, the individual functions are always busy. And it's fault tolerant. They will restart automatically if there's any failures. So we have this big platform for running serverless applications. The serverless application model, code pipeline, you can build those things. I told you a bit earlier about CodeStar, the automatic setup. One of the options you have in there is to say, I want AWS Lambda, or I want to build something, a serverless application. It will set everything up for you. And then we have some application services underneath this. So let's have a quick look at Lambda. Run code without thinking about services. It's integrated with all of the other services that we have at AWS. And it's basically an event-driven function. You have chaining, you have an event comes along, it triggers another function, and you only pay for what you consume. So we have a lot of customers running with Lambda. For example, FINRA, which is a financial industry regulatory authority in the US, process 75 billion financial records a day. All the trades that happen on the stock exchange are processed by FINRA on AWS using Lambda in order to figure out whether there's anything bad going on, and they're looking for patterns to make sure that everyone is following compliance correctly. But we still need to coordinate these things. We want to scale out, we need to keep state. If you're trying to build applications with a lot of functions in them, it takes a bit more to keep these things figured out and to track how everything hooks up. So we've come out with another service called Step Functions. Step Functions lets you do things like this. You say, start, here's my Lambda function, I'm going to select something, and they're going to have a bunch of steps in parallel. You can have them in sequence, you can have conditionals, and your Lambda functions are laid out using a GUI development environment where you can plug everything together. And the Step Functions underneath is taking control of the state and all of the different sequencing that's needed to run all of these things. The other thing we need to do when you make all the systems invisible, we still occasionally need to look inside, right? We need to be able to look and figure out what happened. Particularly in a serverless environment, when you have Lambda functions, you want to be able to track end-to-end transactions across that. So we have AWS X-Ray, again, announced last December, and now actually GA for regular use and with Lambda support in preview. So it gives you distributed tracing. It's an application performance monitoring solution, APM. It gives you end-to-end tracing of your requests through all of your services and logs everything centrally so you can see which services are taking longest. Now, something that only AWS can do is we've instrumented our own services, things like DynamoDB, SQS, Kinesis, so that when you're interacting with those services, your trace records are preserved and the time it takes for those services to run are actually collected. For example, the time it takes to start a Lambda function is recorded by X-Ray as well as the duration of the Lambda function. This is data that you can't get any other way. We have to basically dig into the internals of our system and provide it to you with X-Ray. So X-Ray is very interesting. It's got its own UI and capability that you can use it just on its own, but it has a very powerful API, and it's becoming integrated into all of our partner ecosystem of APM tools and monitoring tools. So if you're already using a tool like, say, Datadog, which is quite popular on AWS, they are working on integrating X-Ray in to get a view into what's happening in the services. And this is acting as a big boost to many of our partners who have been trying to figure out exactly what's going on inside DynamoDB and how do you hook all that back into the overall big picture they have with their own user interfaces. So talking about DynamoDB, building serverless applications, you've got nothing running. You don't want to have a server running if your application isn't running anyway. When there's no traffic coming to your system, you want it to completely shut down. So you want a database that is only there when you ask it to do something. And that's what DynamoDB gives us. It's highly available, it gives you consistent performance, and it's proven at scale. We have some very large customers using DynamoDB. Again, it was one of the very rapid growing, we launched this, and for a long time before Aurora, it was the fastest growing service that we had. Some new features. VPC endpoints is a new one. This lets you basically take your DynamoDB endpoint and hide it in a VPC, so it's no longer accessible to the outside world as a standard API endpoint. These are all web services. So this is hiding it so it's only accessible from your internal applications. That gives you some additional levels of security and control in the way that you install things. The other thing that we've come out with, some use cases for this. Mobile, web, gaming, Supercell are using it, a local company that I had a meeting with them yesterday, very interesting culture that they've developed, as well as obviously a very popular global gaming startup. People like AdTech, there's a lot of applications here where you're trying to do very rapid responses, and getting adverts out quickly is very important. Now, that gives us response times in milliseconds, but we really want to deploy into microseconds. So we've just come out with a new capability called DynamoDB Accelerator. So this is the same API. You don't have to change your code at all, but you point at a slightly different, you set it up differently. And this way you deploy a memory cache that sits in front of your DynamoDB. So you're servicing requests from the cache, but your application logic doesn't have to change. It's just the way you connect to DynamoDB is set up to be slightly different. So you hook into this. Now, this gives you microsecond latency for many of your responses, certainly for read-intensive workloads. It gives you the ability to scale and be very low latency, but it can actually in some cases reduce cost because the cost of accessing the cache is lower than the cost of accessing all the way into DynamoDB. So depending on your workload, there's potentially some cost reductions as well. Really, millions of requests per second are now capable, and you don't need to change your application at all. DAX will sit in between DynamoDB and your applications. And given the number of people we have using DynamoDB, we have, this has become extremely popular solution for us. For example, Thomson Reuters, they built a system for tracking analytics in the news sites. They built it in 2.5 months. It processes 4,000 records a second and really just gives them the ability to see what's going on in their news feeds within a few seconds. A very powerful system that they built using Lambda, Kinesis Stream, and Firehose. Okay. Right now I'm going to bring up another customer, Viaplay, which are going to give you a view of what it's like to build an infrastructure for competing with linear broadcasters. They're building a video solution. We'll have Kai F. Clean come up, and then afterwards we'll have a little video, and then we'll wrap up. So come on, Kai.
Thank you, Adrian, and it's so good to be here. Again, my name is Kai F. Clean. I've spent sort of the last 10 years trying to build a streaming platform for the Modern Times Group. We launched Viaplay back in 2007, and it's today available or accessible on more or less 90% of all the consumer electronic devices in the Nordics. The service is launched in 4 countries, and we offer 15,000 live sports events every year. We have a catalog of about 25,000 videos, a TV series, kids, documentary programming. And we do 130 linear TV channels on the platform as well. Viaplay is a subscription service, but I can't disclose any numbers to you. But what I can say is that on a good sort of prime time night, we deliver somewhere north about 1 terabit per second of capacity, or peak capacity, on the platform. The platform do not only power Viaplay, but it also powers our advertising video on demand services, being Viafree and Viasport. And we try to buy our rights that I showed you on the last slide, whether it's from US studios such as Warner or Sony, or whether it's sports rights such as Premier League, Champions League. We try to optimize how we deliver those rights across these 3 services, whether it's subscription, transactional, or advertising funded. But it also enables us to create one platform where we can benefit sort of the synergies out of the platform across all those brands. And also, our advertising services are available across all these different devices here in the Nordics. Now we're here to talk about infrastructure. So let me dig into a little bit about our infrastructure strategy and thoughts. We run our application and sort of microservice environments here on AWS. We've done so since 2012. We're 100% cloud-based. It's not only our production and stage environment that runs on AWS, but we also run our testing, our Jenkins server, our Jenkins slaves in AWS. We're currently about 50 microservices. We sometimes reach about 2,500 instances on a good sort of sports nights, or Paradise Hotel is another attractive program That takes a lot of infrastructure to deliver. Our live video playout is on premise. It doesn't need the scalability of the cloud. It's rather of a fixed capacity setup. But it enables us to deliver these 15,000 events every year. We do our linear channels from our live playout. When we offer a 48-hour catch-up window on all those events, so you can access the events in the past. We were one of the first ones, or we were the first one in Europe, to my knowledge, that launched live sports in Ultra HD just a few weeks ago. So now you can now you can enjoy Champions League, Formula One, and other sort of sports events in 4K in your house. If you're around in Sweden here in the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks, you can actually watch the Monaco Grand Prix or the Champions League final in 4K if you have a 4K TV in your house. And a Viaplay subscription, of course, but everyone has a Viaplay subscription, of course. Thirdly, in the last piece, is our playout for video on demand. And whereas it's been hosted separately in the past, we're now moving that to the cloud. We're launching that this week. And I'm going to come back to that in a little bit, in a few slides later. Before going into that, I'm going to dig deeper into our sort of application microservice environment that we're running here on AWS. It's one of the pieces that we have invested heavily into is automation from a scale perspective. Obviously, running a video-on-demand service, people come in on the service, towards the evening or the late night, and they want to watch their favorite shows. So we apply these automation rules every day. We scale about 5x on a regular prime time, what is today, Wednesday, and scale down as traffic goes down after midnight. The second leg we've been running and investing heavily into is continuous deployment. We've got the platform to do sort of 10 releases per day. And in order to do so, you need, of course, to automate all your testing, or as much testing as you possibly can. We have invested heavily into trying to make business requirement testing automated, trying to make integration and system tested automated, and of course, client testing the entire system end to end. We even deployed, trying to put all these sort of micro deployments out throughout each day. You want to make sure that you have a stable capacity, a stable performance on the platform following all these releases. So we run a nightly automated load test every morning before we come into work. We put 150% of the load, of our peak load, on the platform, just to make sure that all these releases hasn't created an issue somewhere in the system. The third area that I want to mention, which is sort of new to us, and we're focusing on it quite a lot now, is infrastructure as a code. We are about a 200-size product and technology team at Viaplay, Viafree, and Viasport. And we're trying to make it possible. We're not trying to empower our developers to, create as much value as they possibly can without having to project manage or walk around in the office environment and interact with people. We wanted to give them as much freedom as possible to deploy their innovations as quickly as possible. So we're using CloudFormation in order to try to give each developer the possibility to launch infrastructure in a controlled manner, of course, but it's something that will increase speed significantly. And my colleague Nils Lagerqvist, who's running our cloud team, he's speaking later this afternoon. I think it's actually in about 30 minutes. If you want to go deeper, learn more about how we've used CloudFormation to optimize our development. Finally, coming back to our video on demand, or our new video on demand playout, it is what we're launching is a real-time packaging and DRM solution. And for those of you not in video, what it actually means is that you're creating the format, or you're wrapping your video into HLS or into smooth streaming or into Dash or whatever format you're using in sort of real time. It enables you to customize it to each specific device, because the Samsung TV doesn't have the same sort of baseline support as a PlayStation or as a iOS or as a regular computer. So in order to provide a good experience across all these different devices, as they are upgraded and as new devices are launched, you want to create a lot of flexibility. That's what we build in this new playout solution that we're launching today. We're starting out with about 3,000 titles in 1080p, Dolby Digital, but I can tell you that just as all the TV sets out in there in the world, our platform is also Ultra HD ready, and it's working quite well. Okay, well, that's before finishing up, I'm going to show you a little movie. It's a clip from Inferno that is running on this platform. You can enjoy coming on to Viaplay.
Well, yeah, in jest, but there's another, the final thing that we want to talk about, the final superpower that we need to survive nowadays. There are an awful lot of businesses that are going out of business. And what we really care about is what we need is immortality. We want to be able to put together all of the things it takes to survive in this incredibly competitive environment where the ability to migrate your data centers to the cloud quickly is important. We have programs for helping you with that. We have this partner ecosystem. We have the applications. We have all of these capabilities. We've done it before for many people. And we're finding that we now have a whole lot of organizations that are breathing new life into industries. We have startups that are doing this. We have SaaS companies, and we have enterprise transformations. And all of these people are going through, and they have much better capability to survive. Now, companies nowadays, the lifetimes of companies is shrinking over time. So we've seen that the top 500 companies in the US, there's really only one left from 50 or 100 years ago, it's GE, and they've reinvented themselves a bunch of times. So it's getting harder and harder to survive. You can't just continue the way you were going before. And we're hopefully giving everyone in this room and everyone in the industry superpowers that will help you understand how to survive and take this into the future and build on these capabilities. I'm fascinated to meet all the customers and figure out what we're going to build and the new applications that come along. So thank you, and I'll say tack for that, I guess. And I think there was supposed to be another slide for where we go next. No, it's not in this deck. Okay. So let me put that back. They told me there was going to be a slide to say where everyone's supposed to go next. Anyway, that's the end of the keynote session. There is another session in here. There are sessions downstairs. You get a break now. And look forward to everyone going and really learning a lot from all of the other customers and all the sessions we have today. And appreciate your time to come and spend a day with us and have fun building something, and just let us know anything you need. And this is a very customer-driven organization. We really want to know what it is you need to help you be successful in today's world. So thank you very much.